Hey guys, it's Pastor Jimmy here with
Pastor Mark.
And this is, I believe, if I'm counting right, if I got my math together, this is our third edition of In the Lobby, which once again, we're not actually in the lobby, we're in the sanctuary, but we make up for it by throwing this screen up there that says
we look
In the
cool.
Lobby. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, we're here, we're going to talk about some stuff.
Hot topics.
Yeah, so-
Hot topics. That's where we're trying to lean this podcast towards. Hot topics, things that aren't generally discussed and open, especially on Sunday morning or from the pulpit, even though John Welborn told me that was absolutely the wrong terminology to use, that those aren't actually called pulpits. They're actually called lanterns or laterns.
Oh, I don't know. I always thought it was kind of silly.
A podium?
Pulpit. It sounds like something that would be like for puppets.
Yeah.
Like pulpit with puppets.
Pulpit,
Pulpit.
podium. A
I don't
podium
know.
is actually something you stand on.
Oh, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. I use a table.
Let me look it
because
up.
I'm cool. But anyways, you're going to look it up? That's what we're going to talk about? Yeah. Everybody's already turned us off.
Yep. Exactly.
Anyway, so we want to hear from you guys. We've heard a lot of great feedback. Oh yeah, I love it. You guys should do it every week, which we're going to try to do. And we've had a lot of good feedback, but we want to know. We want suggestions on what we could do the podcast on. So if you have questions, guys, throw it down in the comment section of this. Whether you're watching it on YouTube or on Facebook, you can still post in the comment section. We'll read that. And we'll answer them on the next podcast. So maybe you have something, or if you just want to send us emails, you can do that too. It's jimmy.fairlawnchurch@gmail.com. And for Mark, it's Mark, M-A-R-C, no K. He gets very upset if you use a K. MARC.fairlawnchurch@gmail.com. You can get a hold of us that way if you don't put something in the comments, but do that, and then we'll talk about it. We'll answer it. So today we talked about you showing me the lectern.
Yeah, it's a lectern.
It's a lectern.
It's not a podium.
It's a lectern.
It's a lectern. That's the name of it. A podium's something you stand on.
Okay. All right.
So from now on.
How about a pulpit? What's a pulpit?
Pulpit? I don't know. It's a lectern. Okay. That's what that is.
All right. So, anyways, we are going to talk about why people leave church. So we kind of discussed it and going around throwing some stuff out there. We may talk about a few other things, and it may lead into that. But our main thing is, why do people leave church? And I'm gonna ask Pastor Mark, but I'm asking you guys, why do people leave church? Put it down in the comment section. What are some reasons that, maybe even reasons that you've left church or your friends or something? So why do people leave church? So I'm going to ask you, Pastor Mark, why do people leave church?
I don't know. I don't think I can speak for everybody. I know I've been kind of breaking into that discussion and looking at different reasons why people have left the church. Some pretty big names. Big name people have left the church too. I guess we can probably go with some of the more common reasons, because there really is a multitude of reasons. And not every reason is going to identify with the church you go to. So you really can't put that in perspective. This is just really a generalized topic to talk about. But I think a lot of people think the church is getting to be too commercialized. I think a lot of people feel like it's just a big show that's being put on now. There's no heart and soul being poured out into it. I think people struggle with that. A lot of people also don't like when a church starts to grow either. They like to keep it small. That's an issue if a church starts to grow. And all these reasons, I think, are wrong, but them are just some of the reasons. I know administration-wise, some places that can just turn people's nose up because everything is just basically every I is dotted and every T is crossed, which you think would be a good thing, but sometimes I've seen it in churches where that took the lead. The Holy Spirit never took the lead. And administration just drove the heart of the Father right on out the door of the church because it had to be this way. So anyway, there's a few topics.
I want to go back to the one you said is sometimes, and we've seen it happen, where someone comes into a small church and, what they consider small, or maybe even when it starts in someone's home or something like that. And by the way, I just say this is, I love churches that are in the home. When we started the Blueprint Experience, we started within a small group that was in the home. So I love that because there's an intimacy that you can have and that just happens. It's just a different dynamic. So I love that. I'm definitely not going against that, but I've seen it where people, they like that, and there's nothing wrong with liking that. But then as it moves on, and they kind of like the idea of it growing, and get excitement about it, but then once it does, and you look around, you're like, whoa, I don't know a lot of these people. And there's that uncomfortable feeling. Why do you think that happens?
Because I think, you mean when it starts to grow?
Yeah, why? Because it's starting to grow.
I think because people don't have a sense of value anymore. They haven't really hooked up to the vision that God's, leading everybody with. And I think Scripture is pretty clear that where there is no vision, people cast off restraint. They just don't care. So, people start to lose the vision. People start to feel devalued. Well, they don't need me anymore. This was where I could come and I could talk and share my week and talk about things, but now I'm kind of being overlooked and I'm kind of given a job to do, and now everybody else is in here. It's just not the same as it was when it started. I guess people just feel like they don't qualify any longer to make this work, and it's really an issue within that person. Sometimes in leadership it can be an issue as well. The leaders aren't, basically sharing what God's sharing with them, a closed-off leader. It could be both, really.
So it's kind of, when it's a small church, it's, or a small congregation or a small group of people, and then when it gets bigger, maybe it's, I'm not as important. Is that what you're saying? So maybe that kind of becomes our identity, and then that fear sets in. Well, okay, there's going to be other people. I'm not going to be as big of a deal, So I think a lot of maybe self-worth tied to that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with saying that, so I don't think it's any secret that you and I were like polar opposites with how we are, like personality-wise.
Correct.
So if you and I went into a church together, like a conference or something, there's a good chance we're not going to sit together because I'm going to come in. I'm probably going to come sit in the first or second row. You're going to go somewhere in the back. You're going to sit there and so that you can kind of like sit back and analyze everything that's going on and stuff.
Discern everything, yeah.
So with that, a lot of times I'm more comfortable with in a larger group of people than you are. So the reason I'm asking this is it, okay, it's getting bigger now. Okay, there's a lot of people, and that whole thing is like, man, I didn't sign up for this. Like, now I can't even go up to Pastor Jimmy or Pastor Mark and talk to them. I can't even go up to before, I could just talk to them and sit there for an hour. Now we got all these other people, and, it's, stuff like that. So is there ever an okay time, I guess I'd say that, where it's just like, well, I wanted something small and intimate, so now there's 1,000 people, so I'm out. Is there ever an okay time to be like that?
For the parishioner or for the leader?
No, most of the time, if you started small and you started in a, like in a home or something, when it gets bigger, pretty much everybody that was part of that team becomes a leader, but not always. So either way,
so the perspective of the individual person coming to that that home church or that church
home
plant
church that now is turned into
blossomed,
bigger.
right?
Yes. Yeah.
Is it okay for them to say, well, each individual person has to, people according to their maturity level are going to jump around. and a lot of people, when they're in that immature stage, they jump from church to church to church to church, and they'll always find fault with certain things, and they'll move to the next church, and then they'll be part of division in this church and move to the next church. I mean, that's just that adolescent stage. You'll always get the church hoppers. I planted churches, and to be able to see that and know that, and that's okay. You got to let them go. I think it's okay, and I think that there is. Just like there's different levels in baseball teams, there's different levels in churches. And I think the higher you go, the less amount of people there will be. I know some churches that all they do is teach about the kingdom of God, and every week you go there, the Spirit of God is manifesting, and things are just happening, and the Spirit of God's moving, and they've got maybe 500 people. But then you got someone that just shows up on a Sunday. Not that they're not doing their job. I'm not judging them or criticizing them. Somebody that shows up on a Sunday and they teach on, hey, this is the way you have a smile for the rest of the week on by doing this, and they have 10 to 15,000 people showing up. So I think there's different levels of churches that will suit different people of where they're at, and that's just my opinion.
There's so many different aspects, and that's one of the things I love small groups. We both do. We've talked about that a lot, and there is a lot of bigger churches they have where they have their Sunday services, but then throughout the week they have the small groups, the small connect groups, or whatever it is that they want to call them. They go by different names, but then it still has that intimacy time. So I think that is important. I think that it's even when it gets bigger, but. And two, we've talked about it. When God starts putting something on your heart, that don't necessarily mean it's time to leave. It's like, okay, we've lost something here, so maybe it's where, hey, you just go to the pastor, go to somebody and say, hey, you know what? I'd be happy to start a home group. I'd be happy to do that. A lot of times God puts something on our hearts, and then we want to just take it to the pastor, take it to the leaders, drop it in their lap, and walk away and say, oh, it's not my problem now. And then when nobody does anything about it, or if they do something about it but it looks different, then they get all upset because it really wasn't supposed to be dropped in someone else's lap. That was the vision that God gave you. And a lot of times I think if he's giving you something or points out a problem, he's also going to give you the solution. So, a lot of times we just want to walk up to someone and say, oh, this is the problem here. Oh, we lost this here, and then drop the mic and walk away. And it doesn't happen. So,
how about the people that go to other churches that come to your church? That was a big deal too. When I first planted a church, my associate pastor was a truck driver, and so every other month his schedule changed, and so that would give him certain days off, and he was on a rotating schedule. And so when we first planted this church, the only day we could have service was on a Saturday. We couldn't have it on regular Sundays. And I'm telling you what, we packed this place out. There was standing room only with a church that just opened up its doors. Packed out. And the majority, 90% of those people went to other churches on Sunday. And if you talk to them, they were never going to leave their churches on Sunday, but they just enjoyed coming on Saturday night there. And then when he got his schedule moved around and we could officially start on Sunday, crickets. It's like we had to start over, building from scratch. Yeah. But all those people were being ministered to at our church. That was the thing. They were being ministered, bringing their issues and their problems to our church, and then putting on a church face at their church because they didn't have that intimacy at their church that their mom and dad grew up in and that their grandparents grew up in. And it was a family church that they were obligated to go to on Sundays, but they really didn't have no way. There's people hurting, crying out. They were gladly going somewhere else, sharing all their stuff because they couldn't. They had to put on that face.
Yeah. Did you ever have any with doing that? Did you ever have any opposition from the other pastors that were having it on Sunday, and they're like, man, I don't want my people, and that's a big pet peeve of mine is when pastors call, my people, but I don't want my people going, to another church. Did you ever have any opposition like that?
They personally never said anything to my face when I was in surrounding committee or showed up to a board, a community board with them on there to talk about community issues, they would turn their nose up at me. Yes, but they would never say anything to me, and I never really caught any gossip or any wind of them saying bad things about us. But they gave us the cold shoulder. They didn't even look at us like we were anybody.
You know, that's that Saturday church.
Yeah, they treated us like poop. So
yeah. Do you think that maybe like if you would have sent them a recording of you speaking or something, they'd have been like, "Oh, dude, this guy's no threat," and then they would have been okay and warmed up to you? Like they're like, "Okay."
Well, if yeah, I think so. I think I missed that. Yeah,
you
that
probably should have done that. Yeah,
I should have. Yep.
Yeah, you should have called me. I told you.
Yeah,
So.
gotcha.
But we did though. We saw that because obviously we're Fairlawn Church now, and Blueprint Experience came over Fairlawn and became a ministry under Fairlawn. But when we started it was on Saturdays, and it was something different. It still is. We still do the Blueprint Experience on Saturday nights, and Heather and Diane, they're over it and doing a great job. But there was something different with Saturday, and it was never our intention to take people away from their church. It was like, hey, we want to be an addition to the church. But we faced a lot of opposition. Some pastors were great. Like they're like, yeah, man, we're give us a flyer. We're going to put a flyer. We're going to tell people about it. They wanted to, and that was amazing, and everybody working together. But then we also faced some that were like, called me up as, hey, is so-and-so over there? Did they go over there on Saturday night? Yeah, can you ask them not to come? And it's like, what? No, I'm not going to ask them not to come. So, with that, is it ever, do you think, as pastors, and talking about not really just us individually, but as pastors grouping us into it, do we sometimes like just miss it and just drop the ball with thinking, hey, it's all about what we're doing, and a lot of times you start, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation, when you get in a relationship, if you are real clingy and man, you're calling up every minute, hey man, hey, what are you doing? Hey, what are you doing now? Dude, I just talked to you like 2 minutes ago. And you just become like that. Do you think that ever happens where we try to grab someone and pull them close so that they don't leave or whatever, and then by doing that we push them away?
Oh, absolutely. What scripture comes to mind? One second. I think
Brandon, can you go to commercial this time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
I think it's in Numbers 11 here. Kind of Moses is really the lead individual, and he's got his elders set up at this time, and really nobody is allowed to prophesy in the camp. But yet Eldad and Medad are prophesying in the camp. So the Spirit of the Lord has come upon them. And Joshua, who is underneath Moses, kind of like his right hand, runs up. Joshua the son of Nun, who had been Moses' aide since you spoke up and said, Moses, my Lord, stop them. See, same context. Stop them. They're going to a different church. Yep. Stop them. They're doing something they shouldn't be doing. Put an end to this. But Moses replied, are you jealous for my sake? I wish that all the Lord's people were prophets and that the Lord would put his Spirit on them. So I think that's the stance I think I'm going to take with all that. My idea is if there's somebody from Fairlawn that's been sitting underneath my teaching, I look at that individual as being part of the Fairlawn family, and they're carrying a flame. I feel like they're carrying a flame, and if they decide to start going to some other church on Saturday night, in my mind, they're going over there and they're just spreading and fanning that flame with what they've been given here at Fairlawn. And my heart is for it to catch over there, and the next thing you know, for that church to start being empowered and for that church to start seeing signs, wonders, and miracles. And that's kind of how I see it, just like Moses said. I wish that all people could prophesy. Are you really jealous for me? You know what I mean? Is what he's saying to Joshua here, And I wish, that's kind of, it's all perspective, really. Or I can be like, I can't believe this guy is going over there. He's a traitor. He's not loyal. He's going over there. He's, we're just not going to get his tithe income check every month, whatnot. It's just ridiculous, some of the things that people think.
Yeah. They start just relying
Just
on
real
that.
insecurities.
And that happens a lot. It's like when I was in an internship program, when I was younger, the pastor that I was under, he always made it a point, hey, I don't want to know who gives and who doesn't give. And I've always followed that. I really admired that because a lot of times people feel like, hey, I'm treated different whether I give a lot or I don't give at all and stuff. And it shouldn't be that way. And the reason they feel like that is because they've been treated that way before. And yeah, that happens a lot. Is oh no, I'm going to lose. I'm going to lose that. Am I going to still be able to, have a salary? Am I still going to be able to, keep the lights on and stuff like that? And because we become dependent on the people more than we do God, and just focused on that. So you said like if it's Saturday, if somebody else from Fairlawn was going somewhere else on Saturday, which you shouldn't be. You should be coming to the Blueprint Experience on Saturday. But anyways, so let me ask you this though: we don't have service on Sunday nights. Does it change anything if it's a Sunday night?
No.
How about if it's somebody from the church is like, hey, I'm going to go visit this place on a Sunday morning, or we have two services on Sunday morning. We have a 9 o'clock. How about if they come to Fairlawn at 9 o'clock and then they go somewhere else for their 11 o'clock service? Does it change?
Yeah, I love it.
How about if they just say, you know what? I was here last week when Pastor Jimmy spoke, and it was great, but I know Pastor Mark's going to speak this week, so I'm going to take it off, and I'm going to go over here to this other church. How about that?
I love it.
Yeah.
I'd absolutely love it. Yeah, let them carry the mantle over there, carry the spark, fan the flame.
Yeah.
Let it spread through the community, So, yeah, that would be my heart behind it. And if people wanted to leave and they felt like they were called to go somewhere else and fan the flame, then that's what it's about, and I would bless them out.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we've talked about that, and we've done that.
Yeah.
Someone says, hey, and you come to us and say, hey, we don't feel like we're supposed to be here anymore. We think we need to go over there and stuff. It's like, yeah, let's bless you out. Let's not just have it where you just go somewhere and we don't hear from you or whatever. And then, it does. I think it just puts a bad taste in people's mouths when, hey, you know what, I'm going to go somewhere there. I mean, I guess pastors, would we rather somebody say, hey, you know what, I don't feel like Fairlawn is where I need to go, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to start staying at home on Sundays. I'm going to sleep in, and then around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm going to go hit up the bar, and it's like, oh, okay, at least you're not going to another church.
Well, let's talk about this. I know me and you kind of see differently, and that's good. We want many different perspectives. We see differently on people leaving the church.
No, we talk about leaving the church, like when you talk about the church in general, because when we talk about the church, a lot of times I think I'm talking about the church, not necessarily Fairlawn, but the church in general as...
No. I'm talking about like the church, like somebody walks up and says, okay, Pastor Jimmy, God has told me that I need to go to this other church over here. I think your mindset and my mindset would be, okay, well, at this point, let's bless them out. You know what I mean? I think at that point, it's already gone past the point.
Right.
But I think with proper training, the ideal situation, and it's not a control thing, the ideal situation with proper training would be they would come to us as spiritual authorities, the authorities that are protecting and serving them as leaders here. They would come to us and say, hey, man, Pastor Jimmy, Pastor Mark, would you pray with me? Because I am thinking that, I'm feeling that I'm supposed to go to this other church. I really don't know yet, but can we confirm this? Can we pray together? Can you seek the Lord on that behalf for me? And let's all reconvene back and talk about this. I don't want to make a wrong mistake. You guys, are over me, and you guys are going to be, hearing different things or hearing the same thing or whatnot. And I believe that that's very biblical. And I think there's a process in that. But if it gets to the point where they're like, hey, God already spoke to me, I'm out, I'll see you later, then you just bless them out. But I'd like to get to the step before that.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. I don't know where it is that you're saying that we see differently on.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I'm just saying, like, because there's things when people walk in the doors of the church and they have put themselves underneath my authority, the Lord reveals things to me. I see things they don't see. Things that's going on in their life is revealed to me. Their heart is exposed to me because I'm the authority figure and I'm seeing things that they're not seeing. And so in the same way, when the Lord is telling someone it's time for them to go, a lot of times, in my spirit, I will be able to identify with that, and I'll be able to hear that before they even hear it, and I'll know it's not time for them to be here anymore. I'll know in my spirit that it's time for them to shove off way before they even know it. And so when they come to me and they catch up and they come to me and say, hey, I feel like I'm supposed to go, I'll be like, yeah, brother, I didn't want to tell you this, but, 2 weeks ago, I've just sensed that in the spirit. It was, I want to just confirm that in you. Let's bless you out kind of thing. You know what I mean? So there is that part where the Lord's revealing things to the covering.
Yeah.
We're the gatekeepers.
Well, okay, with that, there's two parts that I want to address with that. So, one, why do you think that doesn't happen? Does people just don't understand, hey, that's what I should do is go to my pastor and tell them, hey, I'm starting to feel like, I need to be somewhere else or I should leave? Or is there, what is it? Why do you think that does not happen very often?
Because I feel like we as leaders are constantly trying to, like, birth trust in people. And where there's a lack of trust, people fly their own ship and try to make moves that are going to be better for themselves instead of leaning on other people's discretion, especially people that they don't trust or they do trust or they're trying to. So that's why relationships are very important, to have a relationship with the people in the body, have that trust in there. I want them to say, you know what? I know Pastor Jimmy's heart and I know Pastor Mark's heart, and without a shadow of a doubt, they're human. They might not all the time get it right, but I trust them with all my heart. I know them. They're good men. They hear from the Lord, and if they miss it, they're going to get it right. You know what I mean? So I'm going to trust them in their leadership. I'm going to trust them, and when they say they hear the Lord, I'm going to trust them. Not that we want to hear the Lord for them. We just want to confirm what it is they're hearing. Not saying, hey, come to us. We want to control and manipulate the situation, and no, you're one of our biggest tithers, so you need to stay right here and manipulate that. And that goes on. That's horrible.
So one of the things I think it happens a lot of times, and I've even had it where there's people just because they don't want to upset me or they don't want to hurt my feelings or whatever. And hey, I don't want to tell Pastor Jimmy, I don't want to tell Pastor Mark that, we feel like it's time to leave. So they don't, and it's a lot easier just to stop showing up, It's a lot easier just to send, when Pastor Jimmy or Pastor Mark call, send them to voicemail. Mm-hmm. I do that to you quite a bit, mm-hmm. and it's very easy, simple, and I don't feel bad about it at all.
Right.
But because I even had that happen, like on Sundays, it's people say, great message, Pastor, and I'm thinking like, you slept through like 3/4 of it. I saw you, You're like, all right, well, tell me what I spoke on, But I thank God that I have people also in my life and that are a part of our Fairlawn family and a part that will come up and say, dude, Pastor Jimmy, I don't even know where that message sucked. Like, it just wasn't there, I have one friend of mine that's been coming to Blueprint and everything that's now is part of our Fairlawn family, and that person has a lot of times, I didn't even notice I did that when I spoke. A lot of times I would look down, mm-hmm. and so they told me like every single Saturday, it's a good message, but you got to look up, and stuff. Mm-hmm. So, and I still do that. Now everybody's going to notice when I do that, but it's good to have those people that will just be honest, but do you think that happens a lot where it's just like, I don't want to hurt the pastor's feelings. I don't want to upset him. And I think a lot of that is because so many pastors use that guilt card too. You know, it's like, why? Oh, you don't. What's wrong with me? You don't like me? Did I do something to offend you? It's like, you know, so they kind of cover it up. And so do you think that is a reason that happens a lot?
Yeah, absolutely.
So now on the second part of that, you're saying a lot of times that God's revealing to you the people that, you know, just the lives and what's going on. And sometimes, you know, hey, it's time for them to leave before they even say anything. So what is it, and I agree with you, that happens, but what is it then, as us as pastors pointing the finger on us and other pastors, that keeps us from going up to someone saying, hey, you know what, you know, God's been speaking to me, and, you know, you could be a big benefit over here. Why do you think that happens? Like, why isn't it, as pastors, as leaders, that we are hesitant to go up to people and talk to them about that? Like if God's showing you, hey, someone else, they should be somewhere else, or something else that I've called them to do. There's something else they should be doing. Maybe whether it's a church plant, maybe it's leading music worship somewhere else, or whatever. Then I'm not talking about, you know, like, oh man, that person's causing a lot of problems. So hey, brother, right. I think you need to go over to the street, the church down the street. You know, they really could use you. They could. I was talking to that pastor, and they could really use somebody like you. You know, but as pastors, should we be going? Just, you know, if God's showing us this, should we be going to them and talking to them about this? And why doesn't that happen?
Well, it does happen sometimes. Not all the time, but. There's also a thing of timing and a season for that. I remember I was in my third year of internship, and I was sitting in our church, and I was sitting there, and this one guy got up, and he started to prophesy, and he picked me out of like 300 people, had me stand up, and he said, I have a sailor's cap on. And he said, he did exactly what you're saying. He said, you got a sailor's cap on. He's like, you're leaving. You're setting sail. You're gone. Everybody looked at me. Everybody. Now, I had roots invested. I had ministries going. I had a juvenile detention ministry that God had opened up, where I was going into the juvenile detention facility, the only pastor allowed to go in there and minister and sit there and tell these kids all about Jesus. And I had an altar ministry going on at the time. I was also teaching classes, and I had people showing up. I mean, I had so many different things going on, but yet here's a sailor's cap. Now, that bugged me, but do you know, not until like maybe 2 years later, when the timing and the season came about, did that mean something? Because I shot out of there, went to a different state. I've left there, went to a different state, and left there and went to another state. I mean, I've done nothing but sailed since then, and with all my ministry. You know, it brings me right here to this point, to this day. So, I mean, it was never more true than that. And he just called me out. So it really has to do with timing and procedure. If God's revealing that, sure, I don't see no reason why not to let somebody know that. A lot of times it's in the opposite, though. In the opposite, I get more of trying to tell people to stay because they're not supposed to go.
Right. Yeah.
There's so many people that sell out for, I hate to say this, but they sell out for financial reasons, or they sell out because the grass is greener in a different area, or the ministry is bigger, or the worship team. I know a guy that's a talented worship leader, and him and his wife were part of our church, and they were amazing. God was doing some things in them, but it just wasn't taking off because of their talents and giftings were through the roof, but their character wasn't. Yeah. And they were at the church where God had them to develop their character because their talents were way up here. Now marriage and character had to rise to that occasion, but they couldn't stand it because their giftings and talents were so high. Right. They had to reach out to a church in Nashville. And they both accepted positions there, high-paying positions, to come on the worship team in Nashville. So what did they do? Even though everybody knew they weren't supposed to leave, they were supposed to go, it was going to be a dead end. We told them. They didn't care. Yeah. They took off. It fell apart within a year and a half, and they got a divorce. It fell apart. The whole thing. Wow. They weren't supposed to go. You know, so...
Yeah. And I never heard that story before. I wish I would have, you know. I would have been calling you the sailor. You old sailor, you. I never knew that, you know. So the sailor,
The sailor.
And get your cup made.
Yep.
The sailor. So yeah, no, that's cool. Well, another reason, and I know we're getting short on time, and we're going to have to start wrapping it up, but I think what happens a lot of times, and we've seen it, and I've even seen it where it starts to happen with me as a pastor, and I'm sure you have it with you, where after a while you get comfortable, and the trust does start to come in with the pastor, and then you start kind of your walk with God, or your relationship with Jesus gets tied to that pastor, and then you start looking at him, and then when something happens, because we're not perfect, we mess up, and that when that happens, when a pastor falls, and we've seen it happen with some big churches lately. We've seen it. So, and then when that happens, we've also seen where other people that's been tied to that church, they're like, "Nah, I'm not part of that church. That's not my home church," But then because that pastor fell, or something happened with that pastor, and there was something moral, or something goes on, then it's
financial.
or financial, or it's just, then it's like, dude, I'm quitting church. I'm out. I'm done. And they just, their whole faith and their whole walk with God is tied to that pastor. So I see that happen a lot. And a lot of times we start, I think, because we're just like, we see God moving and using somebody, and then we're like, man, it must, even without us realizing it, oh man, it must be that person. We saw it even in the Bible with King Herod, which was after he killed John the Baptist, and I'm sure he was like looking over his shoulder, because he didn't want it. His wife and stepdaughter really tricked him with all of that, and here's John the Baptist. He's seen him perform all these miracles, but then when he started hearing about Jesus, he was like, oh, this must be John the Baptist reincarnated, because he tied those miracles and tied those things that happened with John the Baptist. So it was around a person, and instead of God doing it, it was the person. So this person, they're performing miracles, and I saw John the Baptist perform miracles, so it must be John the Baptist reincarnated, and he's coming after me. I cut his head off. So, we've seen it happen even back then, but it happens now as with, people. It's all tied to, hey, it has to be that pastor. No, now that pastor failed, and I'm done. I'm done with this. This whole gospel thing. I'm out. So, anything that you'd like to say about that, or anything to add on that?
I don't know how I can really say this, but I think, again, it goes back to maturity.
Yeah.
It's tied right back into maturity, and that certain people need to grow up. And I know people that are absolutely cannot stand a certain ministry because they see the amount of money that flows into that ministry. And they judge, and they compare, and they look at the homes they live in, the ministers live in. They look at the cars they drive, and they say that they don't need those, and how dare them, and that money could be well spent somewhere else, and they're robbing the ministry. And these are just blanket statements. Some of them could have been caught in theft. There's many different examples, but I think it's just it goes back to a maturity issue, because again, you don't know what that ministry brought in that year. You don't know how much that ministry, unless you've seen the books, has paid out and gave out that entire year. You don't know that pastor went and wrote 2 books last year and took and gave half of the proceeds, and then bought his house and his cars on the money that he made off of the books, and he didn't take anything from the ministry. So, I mean, these are just blanket assertions that people make out of just ignorance. I mean, the kindest way I can say it is just grow up. Really just grow up.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So I'm sure people see me driving the 96 Honda, and they probably are like, wow. That's
yeah, that's right.
Now, another thing and we talked about it before when we were trying to decide on this podcast and the subject, but it's something that we've talked about throughout the years of us just knowing each other, is how there it just seems like, and we hear it, people that don't go to church or left the church, is, well, that church is fake. And I gotta say this, I'm kind of on their side with this. Like when it says like most like churches, not every church, but a lot of times it's like just fake stuff. They're showing one thing on, out front, but then, when you look at their lives, not on stage or not when at church, at church it's like, hey brother, how you doing? I'm fantastic. How's you pull into the parking lot and you and your wife are arguing, you're cursing at your kids, and you and your wife are like talking about divorce, and then you pull in, you walk through those double doors, and it's like, hey, how you doing? I'm doing great, brother. Never could be better. And it's like you put on this mask and you have this front, you put on your church face. It's talking about like, people, when I grew up, my mom would always, we would have to dress up when we went to church, and she'd call it our Sunday best. But some people do that, their Sunday best, with what they show on the outside, putting that mask on, and, it never gets down deep. And then it's just like, too, as a believer, you're looking around saying, man, my life's really messed up because all these people seem to have it together, and they're talking about how great their lives are. And then we find out later on, life's not that great anyways. But what do you think about that? Like, people, they're just coming in and kind of putting that mask on and just not really talking about real things, in that atmosphere we've done as especially for people like me growing up in the church. We can blame ourselves because we've kept that thing out front of, we can't let anybody get in and see what's really going on, what's really happening. I can't let anybody know, I just, caught, my son, or, looking at, naked pictures on the internet. Everybody knew that. They just say I was a terrible father, and it's so. Anything to add on that?
I just look at that like, you're doing life. You're caught up in life, man. And with people are messy.
Yep.
And if you're going to be in the business of loving people, that comes along with time, money, resources, all kind of different things you're going to have to invest to keep that relationship. And it comes with a whole baggage of hurts and wounds. People are just messy. So either you're going to, take people for who they are, and you're going to stay in the game, and you're going to keep pushing forward and try to win people and look at people how Jesus sees them, or you're going to, fall back into that place of hide and seek and running away and two-faced.
How about someone that's thinking, man, this church thing's not for me because I don't want to be fake. I don't want to come in and pretend like nothing is going on in my life. I can't, what do you have to say for people that maybe are going through that right now and just saying, hey, no one's being real, so I'm just out on this church thing?
Well, then I would turn around and I'd look to the leaders of the church, because, a wise pastor once told me that there is a broken heart on every row. You've got to find it, and you've got to let God heal it. That should be the objective for Sunday mornings, not getting up and putting on a show, not teaching a over spiritual message. It should be down to earth, like reaching out, trying to find those hearts that are hiding, that are broken, and letting the Lord heal those, minister to them. And that was one of our topics too today, just this, people are leaving the churches because it's turned into a masquerade show. It's turned into an hour and a half on Sundays. They call that church, instead of it being a community, a family that comes together and just builds one another up. That's what we're supposed to do, build one another up and equip one another. But we're supposed to always be the church and be a family and be connected. And if there's one hurting, we're all hurting. But yet it's not like that. It's smoke machines and skinny jeans, and let's get the worship done and get the word out there and put a show on and pat ourselves on the back. We did a good job, lock up and go to lunch.
Yeah. I just want to put this out there. There's nothing wrong with skinny jeans.
Yeah.
My wife loves them.
Yes.
So I agree, and I think a lot of times, I think we're to blame with that as pastors, of leaders of the church. Like, we want to get up here and we want to tell everybody else how to live, and then we go home and, it's haven't spoke to my wife in 2 weeks because we've been in an argument and stuff. It's easy to tell other people how to live, and so I think a lot of it has to do with we need to look back on us, and do we get up here and do we talk about real things? Is like what we're going through, and have we set an environment where they can do that? I mean, if I get up here as the pastor up on stage and I'm talking about, hey man, I messed up, this week, somebody pulled out in front of me and I cursed them out, and stuff. A lot of times it's like, whoa, wait, pastor, you shouldn't talk about stuff like that. But maybe we should start. Maybe we should be talking about stuff like that, because then people that walk through these doors are like, whoa, they're real people. And then maybe that would solve that whole issue where, we put the pastors and the leaders up on a pedestal as up there with God. And, we're definitely not. We're going to fail people. So I feel like we really blame ourselves for that environment that we've set. And I've said it a lot of times. You've said it. Is get up here a lot of times, like what we start talking about is stuff that we are going through, that God's dealing with us this week. I would say for me, it's like I've said before, like 90%. I think it's probably getting to more like close to like 98%. Like you can tell like what's going on with Jimmy, what's God dealing with Jimmy about, because a lot of times my messages are on that, what God's dealt with me about or dealing with me about.
That's a little trade secret that not a lot of people know.
Yeah.
And I've been to many different conferences and listening to many different pastors and speakers, and you can always tell, that what they're talking about is a direct result of their home life and what's going on in their home life. Even though they're speaking it like it's a sermon or a teaching or whatnot, they're going through that this last week or two or month. It's on their heart, and God's given them revelation in it, and now they're up there teaching it and speaking it. So it's really a telltale sign. Yeah.
So we'll probably get some phone calls like from like pastor associations or something, because we're revealing the secrets like magicians do, like they have death threats and stuff. So yeah, we may have to hide our identity.
That's right.
From now on, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But it also says that every word of the Lord is tested. It says that in Proverbs. So I mean, if we're going to get up and speak a word and declare His word, that it's going to come back on us and it's going to be tested. Yeah,
it's kind of funny how that happens, because we get up here and we talk about stuff that's happened that we went through, and it's like, all right, I got victory over this situation, so I'm going to get up here and I'm going to talk about it, and then you get tested on it. It's like, whoa, I just spoke on this, everything, and now I'm getting tested on, wait, is that really what you believe? Is that really, you just told all these people this, and yeah, it happens a lot. I was about pretty much every time. So, yeah, I think that's a very good point. So, it's good, man. I enjoy doing these podcasts with you, Pastor Mark. Yeah. I'll keep you around for a little bit.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Until we do have applications out for a replacement, but
okay.
We're kind of looking through them, but we're not in a hurry to replace you. I mean,
right.
It may happen eventually.
Right.
So, yeah.
No problem.
No, before, Pastor Mark was getting a little frustrated with me because he's trying to get everything like the screen and all that. We're having issues like that's what I'm supposed to do. But I did joke around with him and say that I was just kind of messing around and just waiting for him just to say, "Oh, I had enough," and you got to go and you leave, and then I could just do the podcast by myself. But it'd be a pretty boring podcast, I think.
Yeah, it would be kind of like your messages. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we definitely keep each other humble. So.
I do too. I do too.
Yeah, I know this. I'll say this: like the times where you have complimented me on a message, I'm like, whoa! Like I feel like, man, I should be like on TV or something. Like this is like, it's like, man, if Pastor Mark is saying a message, so. But no, it's cool. I love you, man. I appreciate. I enjoy doing this, the co-pastoring and the podcast with you. So I'm glad that God put us together.
Please, I mean, we don't have all the answers either. Subscribe. We don't have all the answers. We're not saying we do. But, you guys might have a piece of that puzzle that we need to hear. You guys might have a comment that can just bring revelation to us and make us better. So please, comment back to us, leave questions, edify us by telling us something, that we need to hear. The Lord's put on your heart. We love you guys.
I don't think either one of us would be if something happened. We talked about something, and somebody posted something or sent us an email or called us, and I don't think either one of us would. I think both of us would be like, "Whoa, we missed this. We got this wrong. I can't believe this." And so yeah, don't feel like you can't contact us and talk to us and talk about it. So we enjoy that when that happens, because one, it shows us people are really listening. So,
That's right.
But yeah, guys, thanks for tuning in. We should be doing this next week too. So the plan is every Friday at around 7 o'clock, showing this. This is something new. So I know last week we had some technical difficulty with the sound. We got it fixed. Brandon was right on it and fixed it for us. So. Yeah, so and let Brandon know what a great job he's doing. He's like our behind-the-scenes guy. And I told him, we do pretty much blame anything that goes wrong on Brandon, because he's from Baltimore. And I think it's understandable. People understand, He's from Baltimore. He likes the Orioles. So, yeah, okay.
Yep.
We understand that. He got it wrong, and we give some grace because it must be it's almost as bad as being a Mets fan.
He's
being
getting
an Oriole fan.
really good at doing push-ups. Anybody knows our ministry
Yeah.
that when you mess up,
Yeah.
you drop and give 5. So, yep.
Yeah, big gains. Big gains for Brandon.
Yep.
So
Starting to see those chest improvements. So, anyway.
Just getting there. All right, guys. We love you, and we'll see you next week.